In May of 2024, the DVLA released a survey that they wanted people to complete, or that you could complete if you wanted to. Now, they called it a call for evidence survey. It actually ran from May the 9th until July the 4th, 2024. Now, I did a video on it. In fact, a handful of the channels across the UK did videos on it. I think in total there was about 6 or 7 of them that had all done videos on it. Basically to let people know that the survey was there if you wanted to go and have a look at it and complete it. And we're hoping, the hope was, when I did my video at least, the hope was that a lot of people would go complete the survey and give their thoughts to the DVLA. Now, as I say, it ran from May the 9th to July the 4th. The video that I made on it, I think I released my video a few days after the survey had come out. So somewhere around May the 16th or something like that, I released my video. Whilst it was released, or when it was released, and whilst the survey rather, was active and live on the DVLA's website, or the Gov UK website, so you could go read through it and complete it, my video had a total, at the time, of 36,000 views. One of my most popular videos of the year, that was. But it had 36,000 views. Now, I'm guessing, looking at one or two of the other channels that did the same video, or did their version of the video, to let everybody know what was going on with the DVLA, I'm guessing they're looking at theirs. Looking at their channels, rather, we all had roughly around about the same views. Some got 10, 20,000 more, some got a few less. But all the channels had similar amounts of views. So if you average that out, amongst the 6 or 7 channels that all did a video on the survey that got released, let's say for the sake of argument, there was somewhere in the region of 200,000 to 250,000 views in total, which we can take to mean that at least 200 to 250,000 people had watched the video and had maybe gone to complete the survey and let the DVLA know what they thought of the questions that were being asked. Well, I did an update on the video with the response that the Federation for British and Historic Vehicle Association had released. They'd released their thoughts on the survey as well. And that one that I did, I think I released that one at some point in August. I think it was the early part of August, I think it was, from what I remember. It's on the channel, you can go and have a look at it. But I released that one, and again, that did really well on views at the time. So, another popular one. Of course, by then, the original survey had closed, and it was the HBF VC, I think it was. I think it is, that they put theirs out. So their results went out, and their proposals went out that they had sent to the DVLA. And to be honest, they weren't as good as I thought they were going to be. I thought the FBHVC were there on behalf of the classic car owner, classic car motorist, or historic motorist. Transpires, I don't think they are. But anyway, that's not part of this video. The reason for this video is that the DVLA have now released the results of the survey, so they're all there online for you to go and check out. So I thought I'd do a part 3, or another update if you like, on the results that they published, and run through some of the answers that people were giving and some of the things that the DVLA have compiled, as well as obviously how many answers they got and how many people did the survey in total. Now, it's only going to be a highlight video. I'm just going to go through the highlights of the stuff that I think is important, that as classic or historic vehicle owners we all need to know. I will leave a link to the outcome or the responses to the survey in the description. So if you want to, you can go and have a look at that for yourself and read through it. It is quite hefty reading, but it'll be there if you want to read through it. Now, as I said, on average, there was about 200, 250,000 views across all the channels that did the videos with regards to the survey being there to be completed. Now, based on that alone, you'd have to assume that of those 250,000 people that looked at all the videos, a certain percentage of them, or a certain high percentage of them, would have gone on, looked at the survey, completed the survey, and put their thoughts forward to the DVLA. The surprising thing is, though, the entire survey was only filled in, completed, or answered, however you look at it, by a total of 1,117 people, which is a bit poor, to be honest, having known how many people actually watched all the videos that various channels, including me, made on that particular subject. Now, the survey itself had 9 different parts to it, or 9 sections, if you like. There was the registration of historic and classic vehicles, radically altered vehicles, kit cars, EV conversions, because apparently that's a thing now, Q plates, a right nightmare on its own, VINs, or also known as vehicle identification numbers, what other countries are doing, and possibly putting together some kind of independent authority or independent body to do inspections if that was required. Now, of all of those, the results are as follows. So the survey was completed by a total, I think I said a couple of minutes ago, it was 1,117. That's incorrect. It was actually, the survey itself was actually completed by 1,371 people. 1,162 of those were individuals, like you and me, and 129 people that were involved with organisations or companies that deal with classic cars and historic vehicles. The survey itself was composed of 46 questions. Now, it wasn't just a straightforward yes or no answer. There was the ability to do that, but on every question that was asked, whether you answered yes or no, you would then get a second area to go into, like a box, the dialogue box, to fill in, to give your reasons and your evidence as to why you had answered either yes or no on that particular question. So 46 questions, and all those things to put in. It was quite a lengthy thing to get through. I did it, and I think it took me something like 4 hours, as far as I remember, to get through it. Sometimes it was a complete nightmare, and there was 1 or 2 questions in there that were repeated, but were reworded. It's not like they were trying to catch you out at all, or anything like that when you're reading through the lines. In fact, I think I said in one of my videos, if you're going to look at the survey, you're going to do the survey, don't just read the questions, read between the lines as well, to see what they're trying to get to. But there was a number of questions that were repeated, only reworded, possibly to try and catch us out with some of the answers that we're putting. Now, I don't know where exactly the DVLA are going with this, but some of the answers are absolutely ridiculous as we'll go through them. But like I said, I'm going to run through the highlights. I'm not going to do all the answers, because if you want to see all the answers, you don't want to be here all night watching this video to turn into a right nightmare. If you want to see all the answers or read through all the answers for yourself, as I say, I will leave a link below in the description, so you can click on that and you can go and have a look through it for yourself. Like I said before, though, it does take quite a bit of time to actually read through everything. So I've gone through it, I've read everything in detail, and I've picked out the highlights that I think are the most important to people like you and me, who either like to see classic or historic cars on the road, who own them, or maybe restoring one as we speak, building one as we speak, or you're thinking of getting one to enjoy this summer season with. Now, I'll start with, what is a historic or classic vehicle? That's one of the first questions in the survey. There was 1,115 answers to that question. 27%, or 296 people, said it was a vehicle that was 40 years old or older. 20%, or 220 people, said it was 30 years old or over. And 18%, or 201 people, said it was 20 years. And 18%, or 201 people, said it was 25 years or older. Which led to the question, should there be a separate registration process for historical classic vehicles? Now, there's 1,017 answers to that question. Of those, 49%, or 500 people, said that the current process works really well and there was no need to change it. And 86%, or 554 people, said there was no need for a specific registration number or process for historic vehicles or classic vehicles. This was followed by the question, should a distinction be made between an already existing vehicle that's restored with some new parts and a vehicle that's built as a replica but not based on an already registered vehicle using a collection of old parts? Now, on this one, there was 1,053 answers, and of those, 32%, or 342 people, said that no distinction should be made between the two. This also included the question, when restoring a vehicle, should the parts used be over 25 years old and period correct? Now on this one, there was 911 answers and 625 people disagreed and said that no, whatever age or whether they were period correct or not, whatever the parts were and wherever they came from to help restore the vehicle, that shouldn't be looked into, that should be just left as it is in order to restore the vehicle and put it back on the road. Now, one of the questions asked was, when should the chassis or monocoque body shell of a vehicle have any effect to the identity of the vehicle? And 58 people said if the chassis or the monocoque body shell is replaced, it should affect the ID of the vehicle. Why? I mean, Land Rover, people are changing their chassis on Land Rovers all the time, and there's at least one specific vehicle manufacturer out there that if you took your car back to them for them to replace a rotten chassis on it, they would actually instruct you not to get in touch with DVLA in any circumstances whatsoever and tell them that you'd have the chassis replaced. Now, there was also a miscellaneous comment from a few people that said a fully restored vehicle should have a separate category to avoid confusion with regards to registration, and that they should have a full MOT after the registration is completed. Now, yeah, okay, it may well be worth giving a fully restored car a full MOT after it's been completed, but why would it need to have a separate category? Is that not just creating work for someone somewhere? I don't see where the confusion would be. I mean, if you've got a 1929 Rolls Royce, it's either a rotten 1929 Rolls Royce that's languishing at the bottom of the garden, or it's the same 1929 Rolls Royce that you spent 6, 7, 8 years restoring to its original condition. It doesn't change the fact that it's still that same 1929 Rolls Royce, does it? I don't see the point in that particular comment. But anyway, moving on. There was also the question, do kit cars need further legislation? Now, 43% or 292 people said that because the kit car area is such a small sector, then there's no need for further legislation at all. Then they moved on to the parts that you use to restore, repair or rebuild your cars. And the question was, should remanufactured or reconditioned parts be considered to be the same as brand new parts? There were 764 answers and 71% or 540 people said yes, remanufactured or reconditioned parts should be classed as brand new parts, with only 16% of people saying no, they shouldn't be classed as brand new parts. But I mean, in all honesty, they shouldn't, should they? Because a rebuilt or a remanufactured part is not a brand new part. By their very nature, they've either been the original part that's taken to pieces, fixed, restored, put back together and got working again so you can use it, or it's been a part where somebody's taken it all apart and refurbished it and made it look brand new, but they've still sold it to you at a lower price than a brand new one would be because it's used. It's just been cleaned up and made to work again. So I don't see how that works out, because in my mind, you cannot class a remanufactured or a reconditioned part as a brand new part. They're two totally different things, aren't they? Then we had, should the V5 or logbook, or if you're watching from the USA, the vehicle's title, should that state on there that the car has been rebuilt or restored using remanufactured or reconditioned parts? There were 711 answers, 58% or 413 people said no, it didn't need a list on the V5 that the car had been restored or rebuilt using remanufactured or reconditioned parts. However, 21% or 152 people said yes, it should list on the V5 that the vehicle's been rebuilt or restored using remanufactured or reconditioned parts. What's wrong with these people? Really? Anyway, now this next one will always be a bone of contention. They want to know from us what should be the definition of a radically altered vehicle. There was 840 answers and 67% of 563 people said a major change in original components such as the engine, the gearbox, the chassis, the body shell or the performance of the vehicle. Whereas 11% or 90 people said that the current definition is fine as it is and it doesn't need changing. Then we had how radically altered should a vehicle be before the DVLA needs to be informed. Now on this one, there were 781 answers. 50% or 392 people said that the DVLA should be informed of any changes to original components, the vehicle class or the vehicle reassembly. 12% or 96 people said that the DVLA should be informed of any changes that are different to those shown on the V5 at the moment. Now I do believe that's the current process of any changes that you need to inform the DVLA of. And 26% or 200 people said that they didn't feel as though the DVLA needed to be informed at all. Now, this was immediately followed by the question, should a radically altered vehicle be assessed on modifications to the chassis and the body, or should other components be included in that? Now, for this particular question, you have to know the DVLA's current stance on modifications of bodywork or chassis. Now, for example, if one of my cars that's outside on a chassis has a 3, 4, 5 inch section of chassis that's completely rotten and rusty, and I cut that out and replace it with a section the same size and the same grade of steel that the chassis is made of, the DVLA currently count that as a modification. And because of that, they will issue me with a new VIN number and a Q plate to go on the car. Also, with a car that's on a monocoque body shell where there is no chassis, the entire strength is in the whole entirety of the bodywork of the car. If the floors are rotted out and you replace the entire floor pan in a car like that, the DVLA will also class that as a radical modification, and if they find out about it, they will issue you with a new VIN number and a Q plate for the car. Now, knowing that, and the question, should a radically altered car be assessed on modifications to the chassis, the bodywork, or should other components be included? There were a total of 763 answers. 25%, or 196 people, said that the main emphasis should be on the body shell or the chassis, whereas 34%, or 256 people, said that other components should be considered, for example, the engine, the transmission, etc., etc. Now, 11%, or 88 people, said that everything should be considered, while 4%, or 31 people, said that the only areas that should be considered are areas that affect the safety of the vehicle, such as the brakes or the suspension, etc. And then we had the wonderful question, should there be a separate policy for vehicles that are converted to EVs? Now, on this one, there was a total of 841 answers. 18%, or 155 people, said yes, but with a safety inspection. 13%, or 109 people, just said yes, whereas 5%, or 46 people, said the weight of the battery should be considered in order to find out what safety upgrades the vehicle would need. Again, brakes, suspension, etc. There was also an additional comment from a few people saying that EV conversions should not be classed as restored, rebuilt, classic or historic vehicles, which I believe, I'd go with that, yes, definitely. And then they moved on to Q plates, now, or Q registrations. Now, here in the UK, a Q plated car has a huge stigma attached to it, and it goes back for decades, it really does. At one time, years ago, back in the 40s and 50s, Q plates were only attached to breakdown or recovery wagons that had a crane on the back. I think it was known as a Harvey Frost. So if that Harvey Frost crane on the back, in order to pick broken down or recover broken down vehicles with, they were MOT exempt. As such, they were always issued with a Q registration. Now, as well as that, ex-military vehicles, so for example, military Land Rovers, when military Land Rovers were built and they were going abroad for service, they were just built and they were sent abroad. They were never registered in the UK, I don't think. And then when they came back in, they were put back into civilian life because there was no history on them and the history couldn't be proven anywhere. They were always issued with a Q registration. Now, that was the first meaning for Q plates, the MOT exempt cars or ex-military vehicles. But then the complicated matters by adding Q plates to stolen and recovered vehicles. So if your vehicle was stolen and it was recovered and it had some damage and it went in to get the damage repaired, once the damage was repaired and the vehicle was checked and MOT'd, it would then be issued with a Q registration from the DVLA because it had a dodgy history. So you can see how people were sometimes suspicious about buying a car that had a Q registration on it. But then things have been complicated even more recently, depending on what modification you do to your vehicle. Now, or whether you import a vehicle or not. Now, for the modifications, as I said briefly earlier, if you modify the chassis, and according to the DVLA, that just can mean something as simple as cutting out 3 or 4 inches of rust and replacing it with the same grade steel in the same design, that can get you a Q registration. If you, as I also said, if you have to cut the floor out of your car because it's rotted away and there's nothing left, and you put a new floor pan in, if the DVLA find out, that can get you a Q registration on the car. But as well as that, to make matters even more complicated, if you import a vehicle and you can't prove the age of the vehicle when you import it, the DVLA will issue you with a Q registration when it's first registered in the UK. You, as the person who imported the vehicle and registered it, then have 12 months to prove the age of the vehicle to get the Q plate off and an age replated off. All of mine outside have been done correctly. My Charge has a 68, it has a 68 registration. My Cortina and my Ranchero, they're both 75s, they have 75 registrations. But if you can't prove that the age of the vehicle within 12 months of you importing and registering it, then you're stuck with the Q plate for the lifetime of the vehicle in the UK, whoever you sell the vehicle to, wherever it goes. Alternatively, if you find out rather that you can't prove the age of the vehicle and you sell the vehicle on to someone else within the 12-month period, so if I import a vehicle and I get it registered on a Q plate and then I can't be bothered to prove it, or I just don't want to prove, or I'm unable to prove the actual history of the vehicle, the manufacturing date of the vehicle, and I decide to sell the vehicle, now whether I sell it within 2 months, 6 months or 8 months after it's been registered, the new owner, even if they can prove the history of the vehicle in another country, they can't take the Q off. It's stuck on that car for life. So once it comes in, it gets a Q, there's a minimum period of 12 months, or a maximum period rather of 12 months to prove the age of the vehicle to get the Q plate off. But that can only be done by the person who imported and registered the vehicle. So as you can see, it's a minefield. And if you have two cars for sale or two vehicles for sale next to each other in a forecourt and they're both identical, so if they're both red, both have leather interiors, both have a 2-litre engine with a manual gearbox, both have the same alloy wheels on, and both have the same mileage on them, but one's on a Q plate and one's on its correct age registration, the difference between the two, price-wise, can be thousands just because it's got a Q plate off it. And loads of people will just ignore the Q plate, they won't go anywhere near it. There is a huge stigma in the UK. So moving on to the question from the DVLA in the next part of the survey, the question was, Q plates, is the current process fit for service or not? Now there were 726 answers and 32% or 231 people said the current process was fine and there's no need to change anything about it. Really? 22% or 160 people said that a Q plate should only be issued when the vehicle has no history or its ID can't be proven, which is fine. I'd agree with that one. And 5% or 36 people said that the Q plate process works well for kit cars. I wouldn't agree with that either, but that's just me. Now the next question, I believe, was another one of those trick questions. It's a sort of a repeat of what was said earlier, but it's worded slightly differently. What it actually says is, currently, any modification to a chassis or a monocoque body shell will be issued with a Q plate registration. Do you agree or not? And 22.3% or 224 people actually agree with this, that it's okay to give a vehicle a Q plate if it's only had repairs done to the chassis, rather than a modification where the chassis has been fully taken apart and reconstructed. Now, bearing in mind, the DVLA currently count repair to a chassis in exactly the same way as the entire chassis being dismantled and reconfigured and built totally differently. So 224 people agree with that and say that that's okay. However, 37% or 11 people did state that it totally depends on the amount of modification that's completed to the vehicle. And 27% or 8 people say it should only be issued if the modifications don't line up or differ from the vehicle manufacturer's specifications. Whereas 66.9% or 672 people don't agree with the Q plate process at all. I'll be in that ballpark with them. Thank you very much. And apparently there was one idiot who commented that he doesn't agree with modifications in any form whatsoever, and nothing should be allowed or encouraged that modifies the car in any way whatsoever. I mean, who are these people? Now this was followed by the question, is it important for a buyer to know that a vehicle has been modified? This one had 710 answers. 50% or 354 people said yes, because it's important to know what you're buying, while 43% or 302 people said no, the onus is on the buyer to check and find out what it is they're buying before they actually buy the vehicle. Then there was the question, should historic or classic vehicles that have been rebuilt or restored be given an alternative age-related number instead of a Q plate? Now I think this is another one of those trick questions because it doesn't give you all the choices. The actual choice in total would be, should a historical classic vehicle that's been rebuilt or restored be allowed to keep its original registration, be given an alternative age-related registration, or be given a Q plate? Now you notice in the DVLA's question they leave out the bit where it says should it be allowed to keep its original registration. Now, if all you're doing is rebuilding or restoring a car that was originally registered on the road in the UK, and you're rebuilding it or restoring it back to its original specification, why would you need to change the registration on the vehicle? It's still the same car. But anyway, in total, there was 876 answers. Of those, 59% or 520 people said yes, there should be given an alternative age-related number instead of a Q plate. 18% or 156 people said no, it should be able to keep its original registration, which I'd agree with. And 14% or 120 idiots said no, it should be given a Q plate regardless. And the next question was a bit of a strange one. The next question was, when should the DVLA issue or allocate a new VIN number? Now, for those of you who don't know, a VIN number is a vehicle identification number. Personally, I wouldn't have thought that the DVLA had anything to do with the process of issuing a VIN number. Because bear in mind, the VIN number of the car, what that tells you, it actually goes on from the manufacturer of the vehicle. It tells you what make it is, what model it is, when it was made, what interior it has, what colour paint it has, what optional extras were allocated to it when it was ordered or when it was built. So, to my way of thinking, the only people that can give a VIN number would be the manufacturers of the car originally. I wouldn't have thought that the DVLA would need to get involved or would be able to get involved in changing a VIN number, but apparently they can. Anyway, in total, there were 793 answers, with more than 50% of people leaving comments as to when the DVLA should or should not be able to allocate a new VIN number. 18% or 141 people said only when the vehicle's original ID is unknown. 11% or 86 people said when the vehicle's original VIN is lost or unknown, which is basically the same as the first one. 8% or 62 people said they should only allocate VIN numbers to brand new vehicles, which again goes back to what I was saying, that the DVLA, as far as I'm aware, has no input into brand new VIN numbers on brand new cars. That's all down to the manufacturer. 4% or 31 people said they should only issue new VIN numbers to kit cars, and 6% of all those people stated that the DVLA should never get involved in allocating a new VIN number unless it's only ever as a complete last resort. Now, the next question was linked in with that one. The next question was, how could the DVLA authenticate a vehicle's ID when the original VIN is missing or not available without allocating a new VIN to the vehicle? Now, there were 711 answers to this particular question. 39% or 279 people said they could do it by working with owner groups and vehicle manufacturers to establish the original VIN of the vehicle. 11% or 79 people said that they could do it by the use of photographic evidence or historical records, with around 16% of people saying that an alternative way isn't possible and the only possible outcome would be to issue the vehicle with a new VIN number and a Q plate. Then they move on to saying that the DVLA only currently allocates a new VIN number to a vehicle that's had its chassis or its body shell replaced. And as well as that, all modern vehicles currently have the VIN number hardwired or hard copied into the vehicle's ECU, as well as being stamped in other areas on the vehicle. In this question, they're asking, because of all of this, is DVLA issuing a new VIN still relevant, or should it be abolished altogether? 50.4% of 409 people said yes, it's still relevant to maintain a physical record and in order to check for historic or traceability reasons. 18% or 37 people said yes, it's still relevant in order to protect against ECU hacking or electronic fraud, whereas 9% or 19 people said that the current system works fine as it is, there's no need to change anything about it. There was also the question of, should the DVLA copy other countries' registration processes? Now, this one had 436 answers. 14.5% or 134 people said yes, they should copy other countries' registration processes, while 24% or 32 people said there should be an international standard for the registration of vehicles. Really? Why? 18% or 24 people said that the UK should adopt the USA style of vehicle registrations. I'd be in favour of that. Not that I'm biased at all, but I'd definitely be in favour of that. Maybe then we could all have vanity plates as well. Oh, that'd be fun. 8% or 11 people said that the UK should use the same registration process as the EU. shouldn't have anything to do with the EU in all fairness, and a further 8%, or again another 11 people, said that we should adopt the French model. God knows why. And a massive 92%, or 113 people, said that the UK should maintain its own standards and its own process for registering all vehicles. I agree with that, although possibly with a little bit of the American influence in there as well. There was also the question, should the DVLA set up independent advisory groups to help and to support with the registration of classic and historic vehicles? In total, there were 722 answers. 64%, or 346 people, believe that the DVLA should use motoring clubs and independent bodies, not just government bodies, in order to help support the registration of classic and historic vehicles, with 24%, or 35 people, saying there's no need to set up any kind of advisory group at all, and 17%, or 24 people, that would say that left the answer of setting up any new advisory groups would just be a complete waste of money. Now, throughout this survey, some of the comments that I've read through have been absolutely hilarious. As I say, I'll leave a link in the description to the survey results so you can go and read through them for yourself. But as an example, there was one idiot. I mean, I don't know what this person was thinking of. Obviously, they hadn't had their medication on that particular day when they left this comment on there. But they actually said that all classic cars in the UK, if they're over 20 years of age, should have the ID, the modifications, and any changes that have been made to the vehicle electronically recorded in a form of digitised passport. So effectively, a digital ID for your car. Why? We don't want digital IDs for us, never mind for our cars, but then I suppose there's always one muppet. Anyway, the bit that you've all been waiting for, because I know you've all been waiting for this bit. Now, currently, any car that's over 40 years of age has MOT exemption, or personal choice MOT, if you like. So if your car's 41, 42, etc., etc., you only need to take it for an MOT if you want to. Legally, you are not required to have the car MOT'd in order to use it on the road at the minute. So the next question on the DVLA survey was, should there be a new type of safety check, or MOT, for classic cars? Now, this one had 1,083 answers in total. 36%, or 394 people, said that there was absolutely no need for a new style of safety check for classic or historic vehicles. 18%, or 196 people, said yes, the same or similar to the current MOT for cars registered as classics or historics. 10%, or 109 people, said yes, but it should just be a basic roadworthiness safety check. 8% of people said it should be a full MOT, but one that's appropriate to the age of the vehicle. And 5% said an ad hoc inspection when the vehicle is used on the road or following a major restoration. And that's pretty much it. That's everything that was listed. As I said earlier, that's just the highlights. I will leave a link in the description if you want to pop over to the GovUK website and read through the entirety of all the results that came out of the survey. Currently, though, the DVLA are taking into consideration all responses received, and they're looking into the possibility of making arrangements for potential changes. So I've absolutely no idea what that means. I'm guessing it means that we're going to go back to having some form of MOT for historic vehicles, and they'll probably find other ways to screw over as well, as they always do. Anyway, if you found this informative and helpful in some degree, caress the like button on the way out. Consider subscribing to the channel for more crazy, wacky and informative stuff like this. And if you haven't watched the 2 earlier videos that I did on the survey that DVL released, I'll leave a link to the first one up here from May, and I'll leave a link to the updated version from August up here if you want to watch that one as well. I would strongly advise you to go and watch those 2, because this one's probably not going to make an awful lot of sense to you if you haven't watched those 2 previously. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.